Guys, episode 1, welcome.
Oh, welcome. It's here.
It's here.
Finally here.
Finally here.
So today is really a cool day because we are aligned with a friend of mine, Ondi Timoner, who is a phenomenal documentary filmmaker. And Ondi specializes in observational filmmaking. She's won awards for observational filmmaking, amongst many other things. And today is very special because she's actually premiering one of her films tonight at the Woodstock Film Festival. I also want to just mention that it's Ben's birthday today. And it's our launch day. So this is a big special day.
Look at
today.
you being cute, saying nice things.
It's true. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
So the film that's premiering tonight at Woodstock is titled The In-Between, and it is about it's the only hospice care facility in America for homeless. And it's a beautiful story. It's a year-long journey within the walls of that space. And this is one of 2 films that will be discussed tonight. The other film, Ondi won awards for in 2021.
Yes, Last Flight Home. A beautiful, heartbreaking story about her family coming to terms with her father's intentional death. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's beautiful, it's rough, it's eye-opening, it's all the things. And I watched both films. Just binge them both. They're phenomenal. So we won't talk anymore. Thank you for coming. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts on Ondi.
Go see the movie and please enjoy our episode with Ondi Timoner.
Ondi, welcome to the Art of Human Maintenance. Thank you for joining us. For making time for us. I know how much you have going on, and it's so cool that you made time for us to show up and that you saw an alignment. So thank you for joining us.
Tell us why today is so special.
Yes.
Well, we've just arrived at the Woodstock International Film Festival, where I was so happy to win the U.S. Grand Jury Prize for Best documentary.
Documentary.
We don't know what doc means. For Last Flight Home a couple of years ago. And it's just an absolutely gorgeous festival. A lot of U.S. premieres happen here. Some world premieres happen here. And we felt like for our sweet, really sweet and precious film that we just made, The In-Between, about the only hospice and recuperative care center in the country, we felt like it would be beautifully received and sort of have this warm incubated experience at Woodstock. So we've just arrived for the premiere, which is tomorrow, Friday. And also we're releasing the soundtrack, or Paramount is releasing the soundtrack of Last Flight Home, I think in honor of that occasion, or it's just some kind of serendipitous fathers behind it probably. There's some wisdom mixed in with Morgan Doctor, my wife. Morgan Doctor's incredible soundtrack. And she also scored The In-Between and produced The In-Between. So it's a kind of a family affair. My son is flying in from Oberlin College, where he's a senior and has fall break, and driving up with my nephew, Eli Timoner, who you saw in last one. Those 2 are driving up from New York City tonight for the premiere. So it's just going to be a sweet, special occasion. Yeah. And hopefully the beginning of a strong impact campaign with The In-Between, because the model of that movie, the model of that place, which is also called The In-Between.
Beautiful name.
It needs to be spread far and wide. Like, it makes financial sense for all those Republicans watching. Like, it reduces the strain on the healthcare system, on emergency rooms, because people actually get the care that they need, and the community that humans need. And it's truly a model of how to treat people with basic dignity. And in many cases, their symptoms reverse as a result. Like, they come in on hospice and miracles happen because they're finally getting the care that they, basic human dignity and care. We have this incredible character, and we can show a clip of this perhaps, but she walks around the inn with a cat around her neck named Rogers. Her name is Kimberly Peterson, and she is actually the resident death doula of the place. But she came in as a hospice patient with 10% chance to live. And she was going to die. And she had, I mean, this is what happens with homelessness. There's over 600,000 homeless people in this country. And many of them were just one diagnosis away. Like we're all kind of right there. And even if we don't feel like we are, she had a heart condition that put her in the hospital, and her roommate didn't pay the rent, and she came home to an eviction notice. Suddenly she's homeless, but she needs a defibrillator for her heart. So they thankfully sent her to the in-between within like 2 days of her being in a shelter, because they realized they couldn't take care of her, because shelters work like this. Like at 6 a.m, you get thrown out onto the street again, and you get let back in the evening. So anybody who has any need to plug in something can't be in a shelter. So she was put at the in-between, and she was going to die, and she recovered. And she realized as she was recovering that she had a proclivity for helping people through their transitions and dying, because a lot of people do come there with, highly advanced terminal illnesses, and they're coming there to die in a warm bed and to not die alone on the street, which I think is a basic right that we should provide for everyone in this country. And so, she was helping people. And so the in-between administration, and their like beautiful wisdom, said, you know what, let's put you in death doula training, and maybe you can stay. In the meantime, one resident passed who had a dog named Boo Boo, who became like the resident dog and goes and visits everybody and really cheers everybody up. And then there's Rogers, the cat, who actually can tell when people are dying. And
that was amazing to me, seeing how he would go and attach himself to a certain room when he knew it was like that. You can't make that up. That was so cool.
So I would like to sort of touch base on the fact that you said, you made reference to these people are less likely to be in the hospital. They're there getting the care. Healing in a place where you are aligned, healing with people that you respect, that respect you, and that are in a similar situation. I mean, how lucky are they to have that option? I would rather go there than the hospital.
Right? I mean, when my mother saw it, she wanted to move in. And I was like, Mom, you're not unsheltered. Like you don't qualify for the in-between. But she was like, this place is like the happiest place on earth.
And there's dogs and cats. By the way, that dog is a nugget.
My mom. So my mom from Last Flight. And yeah. I mean, the thing about Last Flight Home is you get to know my family very intimately. And then you also kind of get, I've heard from people kind of transpose your own family onto my family. And so it's like this dual experience, which I think taught me something about the miracle of filmmaking and that dimension. But my mother, anyway, I was on tour with Last Flight Home when she saw an article about the in-between in the LA Times. And she said, you should check this out. She cut it out with her scissors, And I sat up in bed, and Morgan's like, what are you reading? I was like, I'm reading about this incredible place that if it is like an inn, if it's this cozy, I was like, babe, we got to go on our way to Sundance, because we have to, we have some reason or other to go to Sundance almost every year. So I'm like, on our way to Sundance, when we land in Salt Lake City, which is where the in-between is based, we should swing by this place and roll in with cameras. And if it's like an inn and it's cozy and it doesn't feel like this kind of cold medical facility, we should do at least a short film about it,
That's how it came about?
Wow.
That's how it came about. Yeah.
Wow.
I would not have.
That's incredible. That was one of my questions that I had for
you. Yeah.
I'm
that's the cool thing about just being a documentary filmmaker, at least, the way I choose to live it is, sometimes I just want to tell stories about things that we don't know about, that we should know about, because they're models, and if you can make a film, then hopefully I made it purposely short. It turned out to be a feature because there was just too much story there, but it's a short feature at 70 minutes. So it's just over an hour. And that way it can play conferences. It can play the mayor's. My dream is that it plays all the mayor's conferences, the governor's conference, any conference about homelessness and how to handle it,
Absolutely.
and then schools, because I realize there's this unconscious stigma that we have, whether we all obviously want to see the ridiculously horrible problem of homelessness in this country. It's so embarrassing. If you go to Europe, like, you don't see it at all there, like we have it here, and it's just, there's people with so much money, right? And then there's people who are living on the street, like next to each other, and it's just this dichotomy that none of us can quite put together, I think, in our brains, but yet we feel powerless. How do we do anything about it, right? And so there's this feeling like, oh gosh, I don't know what I hope this person doesn't ask me for help, because I don't know what to do to help them. I can't bring them home, right? They're chronically homeless. Like, what do I do? And some people drop everything and bring them home, but most people, are like looking for a coin or a dollar or something like that. So I feel like meeting the homeless people that you do in this film, when they're not homeless anymore, and their basic needs are met, they are sheltered. So you're meeting unsheltered people when they're sheltered, and they might be facing the end of their lives, but they're doing a heck of a lot of living. They're playing games. They're going on field trips. They're like they're loved. They're loving each other.
The field trip was the most compelling thing I saw, I think, because the happiness thing, even when they went to the car show and
watching their faces light up,
their faces, having memories of their parents' cars, and like just going back to when they were in their prime, and like you can see they totally forgot about what they were going through, and we're just in that moment, smiling, laughing,
they also
high-fiving.
They grew up in homes, in happy,
feeling human
again. Grow up on the street, so it's just kind of like, I think it reduces the stigma, I guess, is my long point on it. I think that it's the only film I've ever seen about homelessness where they're not homeless. And that's the trick. That's why I love it so much, and that's why I really hope it gets out there in a big way. But it's hard with a topic like that in this current climate. So complicated. My passion will overwhelm the circumstances.
Oh my God, it's so deep and beautifully done. It's beautifully done.
All three of your films, the feeling I got through the three that I was able to just kind of really lean into and capture was that I've always kind of thought this, but your films reminded me of this, is that everyone, no matter if you're a billionaire, if you're a waiter, if you're a business owner, whatever, whoever you are, no matter what you're going through, what stage of life you're in, everyone is just a kid from somewhere. Everyone starts that way, and then you get this immense perspective shift and humility. And I was so like humbled watching that, because your films all crack the shell on that immense immersive perspective on things that we don't understand. And it lets you go like, you can't look away. You can't stop watching it. And it's so highly emotional and joyful and all the things. So you did a really beautiful job. I mean, I'm not going to go too far into it, but I'm in film in some department, and I have trouble watching sometimes because I overanalyze the story I'm being told. And I'm like, and I just was able to really sit with it and just live and watch your films. They're so beautiful. Did a wonderful job. Seriously.
Thank you so much.
Gorgeous. I mean,
it's just I just feel like every film should feel like what it is, I just try to make it have the visceral quality of being there that I experience, because it's just a favorite, like probably one of my favorite things about this career that is so demanding, but so fulfilling, is that I can communicate, if I can do it right, if I do it right, then I can bring you there. That's why like our logo's an airplane, and it's all about the journey. Like I can take you on that ride so that you actually are in there and you feel like those people now, and you just won't look at the unsheltered the same way again. I think, I hope, and death, in the case of Last Flight Home and The In-Between. I mean, The In-Between came directly out of Last Flight Home, because here was the story of my father and his last weeks and medical aid and dying, but it wasn't a plan I had. It was something that I survived by doing. Like I was so scared to lose him that I just ended up asking him if I could film him when he came home to start the process. Like and he said, I instinctively know you're on the right track, which
Wow.
I didn't know I was on.
Right.
You know, even filming it with 4 cameras because it's like my other language to make documentaries. But I was also like, you know, I have to compliment Morgan both on the In Between and in Last Flight Home. The score is so crucial, you know, like in the In Between, it's a jazzy tempo. It's taking you from story to story and around this place. It's the story of a place. Like I've actually never really told the story of a place as much as in this. Like if there's any other film, it would be We Live in Public, where you're in this bunker and it has this feeling to it, like you're trapped in there, kind of like this feeling of being in this other universe, this other world for 30 days, you know, at the turn of the millennium. But that's about a man, and it's about the internet, and it's about so much. This is really about this wonderful place and these people that you meet in it. And so her soundtrack's crucial. And then in Last Flight, you know, you're on this march towards this day that my dad has chosen. And it is this feeling of like, you know, it's the spiritual journey you're on. All of us, like aligned with us walking this plank to losing our favorite person in the world. You know, but we have to support him. And it's just this, I feel like the score is just remarkable. So
it takes you there.
But
it is, yeah.
And it's those shots of like nature in between, you know, or like him through the window, or, you know, just him alone while we're outside having
those
time.
moments. Yeah.
The score was amazing because it meets you where you think you're at when you're watching it emotionally. It's like, I'm not sure. And then it just comes in and it just carries you right through it. It nurtures you through that moment.
That's what it was. I said, I want this score to put big arms around the audience.
That's what it felt like.
I asked Morgan to do. I said, you need to envelop and hold the audience and help them through this movie. Because they're going to be crying. Yeah.
Something I've always said. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just saying, like, you cry. Like 98% of people who see this film cry.
Yeah.
Right? Last Flight, not the In Between, but as much, I think. But you laugh also. Like, and that's so crucial.
He's funny. Yeah.
I don't think they cry for your father. I think that people put themselves in that situation and cry for a death that's yet to come or already happened. And that leads me to what I was going to say. I've always said we do death wrong. There's so much fear around death in this country, and it's not that way. It doesn't need to be that way. It's such a beautiful part of what we're here doing. We're guaranteed to die. So how do we shift that paradigm to celebrate death and escort people off to their next big journey and bring, like, you know, and you've done it in these 2 films. You've taught people how to accept death and really show up and be there gracefully for each other, and not just the person who's dying, but your family members and whoever's in that room mourning that person or far away mourning that person. Like, thank you for that. It's really phenomenal.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's so necessary.
You know, I mean, my family, I felt so scared to put them out there in the most vulnerable states, you know, because when I realized this needed to be a film, it was after my sister, who's a rabbi, asked me to make a memorial video that was supposed to be 5 minutes long, and it spiraled into a 32-minute memorial video.
There she goes.
She's like, I was supposed to plan a memorial service, and it's the night before, and you've turned in a 32-minute film, and now it's a film screening. And that wasn't the plan. So she was not pleased about that. But the reaction to the short, which wasn't even, you know, including Dad's death or anything, the reaction was like what you said. It was like people weren't as scared anymore, and they were able to, like, kind of see the beauty and the life in its purest form, the pure presence that happens when a person is approaching the end. You know, all of the bills and the messages and all the stuff falls away, and what is left is love, you know, and relationships and the things that actually really matter in life that get covered with stuff all the time, you know? So being able to show that, which my sister, you know, at that time, medical aid in dying was illegal in Jewish law and Reform Jewish law. So
Wow.
it was a problem
Sorry.
for her on that level, but also she felt like it was sacred and therefore should remain private. So Rachel to be behind it and accept it was challenging. And I had to call mom because she was watching the film that at that point, like twice a day to spend time with dad. I mean, she's seen the film like over 500 times.
Oh, bless her
And it
heart.
was healing her. So she called Rachel. And then Rachel's clergy said, you need to let this come out. It's going to heal so many people. And by the end of the journey, she hosted a screening at the temple, at her temple, with like 700 people in a popcorn truck, you know. So she was totally on board by the end. Yeah, because she saw the impact it had. And she went, and she's gone. She took it to Albany to change the law in New York. She, you know, she's crisscrossed the country. She's shown it at so many temples that have asked her to speak. She always says yes. She has a huge poster on her wall, and it made the movie I have coming out about her next month. It's premiering as the centerpiece of Doc NYC. It's called God's Children, and I've been making it for 5 years, even before Last Flight Home. And it's about her partnership with this Black Baptist church called Antioch Baptist Church to try to stop racism and anti-Semitism in Brooklyn. Super ambitious project that we started film from the very beginning of it. And gosh, she was a very hard person to document until Last Flight Home. And then when she saw the impact a film could have, she got a little bit easier to work with.
She's all in now.
Not much of a fan of cameras and stuff.
That's
Wonderful.
such a great story, though.
Thank you, Dad.
The trajectory of that. Yeah.
Thank you, Eli.
Thank you, Eli. But yeah, Daddy seemed to know, and he never wanted the camera turned off. And he knew more than I did. And I think all of us, they all thought I was just processing as I did. Like that I do. Like, oh, Ondi films everything, so she's just being Ondi, you know? But it was about halfway through that we realized that medical aid in dying was so important to have as a law, and that at least we should make a short film to pay it forward to other families, because you know, everything that you see in that film is possible because Dad could choose the day. You know, the kids wouldn't have been home. He wouldn't have been able to dispense the wisdom he did to them. They wouldn't have the closure that they had. Like, all of us were able to convince him that he gave us everything when he thought he failed.
That was so sad. Oh my!
I loved when Rachel made him get to a place where he could finally get things off his chest. He's been holding. That was one of the most pivotal moments, because men in general don't do that. They just hold it until they die. I mean, it's so sad. She has
told me since that they actually, that she actually, you know, goes to many people's deathbeds as part of her job as a rabbi. She has 1,000 families or 1,400 families in her congregation now. You know, including like Senator Schumer and, you know, Jody Cantor and Ezra Klein. Like, they're in her congregation, and she goes to people's deathbeds and she tries to do this deathbed confessional with them. And most of the time people will not say what they're ashamed of. And the only way, which I learned, as you can see in that hilarious moment where she stops me and says, "Here's the exercise." And I like shrink 2 inches, because she's not only my older sister, but a rabbi, and bring up for exercise. But I'm trying to make Dad feel better. And that's what most of us would try to do. You know what I mean? And I wanted to leave it in because it was such an important lesson that we can't take people's shame from them. They have to let it go themselves. And he did, you know? So
what do you think and I think I know the answer already, but what do you attribute your ability to, not diffuse, I don't know what the word is, but to go into such a sensitive type of topic, whether it's your father's story or the in-between, and be able to
hold space for it.
Not only hold space, but film it. And you naturally have an ability, which even I'm seeing on this call right now and the other interviews I've watched of you, where you're able to make any topic feel approachable and you're easy to speak to about it. And then you're also able to film it and people are in like the in between is an example of that, where they're going through something that no one ever wants to go through, let alone be filmed doing it, and you're just all up in there, and it's like it's like you're not even there.
Then they're at
you
ease.
have an
they're
ability,
participating, and joyfully so.
And I'm asking what your ability is. Like, where does that come from? Your passion for telling these stories, being able to lean into these people's moments and do it with conviction and purpose and intention. What does that come from?
Well, thank you for saying that. I think I have an innate just wonder at all of what of the human condition, of what we go through here on Earth. And I had never been through death before. Facing the death of my father, really. I'd lost like one really good friend, Karen Black, the great actress, who from Easy Rider. She was a great friend, and she was as close as I had come. So I had been very blessed to not really have that much immediate loss in my family. And, my father was my best friend in a lot of ways, and watching him have that stroke and be sidelined and disabled, but so smart as he was to the very end, as you saw, and so wise, and then have him be pushed out of the airline he created and bankrupted, and being 9 years old and not having a chance to do anything about it. I feel like I was always looking as a kid for what was a way I could make an impact, what was a way I could tell stories about people that, that should be elevated so that we could all learn and question our own lives and our own experience, and I feel like I approach it from that perspective. And so I don't have any judgment, of the people I'm filming. And so they can feel that. They feel safe, I'm pretty much an open book. And so I'm going to tell them stuff about myself just naturally that comes up. My interviews aren't like interviews. They're more like dialogue, conversation.
Yeah.
And then I have questions, of course, like you guys do, but this is a conversation we're having, and so it feels very natural. And that's kind of how my interviews are. I'm not somebody who looks down at the list of questions,
Yeah.
I look down at the end maybe and make sure I hit everything. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, like I'm making a film right now that I'm not at liberty to talk about, but it will be announced at the end of November, I believe.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And I've been shooting it in Germany and with people who are anything but film subjects. They are like prosecutors, they're prosecutors.
Oh, wow.
They're almost like historians. They have no idea why I want them to like walk through a square or drink a cup of coffee or do this or do that. And they're just like, she is very persuasive. And I just, I don't know how it's happening, but
it
they're
translates.
Doing it. So
That's
it's
funny.
some kind of passion that I have. I think the passion is infectious. The fact that I have so much energy, people are always like, how are you 51? Like, I'm just like bouncing off the walls. Like, most of my like 25 and 30-year-old employees are like asleep and I'm still editing, you know what I mean? Or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's just like I just kind of can't stop. I think it's why I'm on the planet, honestly.
So who are your biggest contributors?
So films can be funded by investors, or sometimes if they're films like this that are really here to, make the world a better place, straight up, then you can't necessarily go to like Netflix for that money or investors for that money. And then there's benefactors. There's people who have wealth and they put it specifically intentionally into projects like this. And so, in this case, I'm sitting at White Feather Farms, and one of the executive producers of The In Between, Sarah Johnson, who also is a great supporter of the Woodstock Film Festival. I'm in her home. It's a gorgeous place to be. She's a gorgeous human being. And she just has a huge heart. And she and her sister, Holly, of the Holly Jolly Foundation, you'll see their names, and the Lozen Foundation, you'll see that name, and Artemis Rising, you'll see that name. So like these foundations support films like this that should be here, and they need to be supported. And that's, a person, you'll see Geraldine Dreyfus's name. She connected me with Artemis Rising and Regina. She's a catalyst for so many great films to be in this world, for profit and not for profit. A film like this, nobody's going to get rich on this film. This film is to actually spread the model of the in-between and to have us all look at homelessness differently.
I think we're going to get spiritually rich from these films. It's a different type of win.
Yeah, and so Last Flight Home, for example, Jewish Story Partners supported that with a finishing grant. But essentially, and I think Mountain Film, who run Mountain Film and Telluride, gave it a micro grant. But otherwise, I paid for it, because I got myself into it, and I've had a successful career. So I was just like, I'm making this film. This is what's happening, And then I sold it. Like then it premiered at Sundance and it premiered at Telluride, and it has played for all around. It's all around the world. It's translated into every language. It's on Paramount Plus everywhere, and it's so great. I mean, maybe we should show a clip of it for people that haven't seen it. Do you want to show should we show like my dad giving advice to?
Yes.
The kids.
Yes. Yes.
That was such sweet moments. Let's do that.
Main thing I want to talk about is I want to ask for advice on like just how to live your life.
How to live in life. Start off with respect for the one people you don't know, and love for the people you do know. Whatever that means. I know what that means. You will always have my love.
It was unbelievable. There's like a Buddha behind him on that table.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Standing there the whole time, like, is he happening?
It was so sweet. It's such a sweet moment. And you can see that, the kids all really received, they didn't do it because they had to, they really received him. And that was so sweet to see. So I really cherished that.
And the one granddaughter, I believe, that was crying and just kind of broke down. It was pretty impressive that most people were like in the moment and just solid and there with him, and not putting their own ego, their tears, my hurt is more important than what you're going through right now. Right? There wasn't that, but it's also so real that somebody does just lose it, and both is okay. And that's the message, right? Like both are, because you can't bottle up those tears if they're there and they want to come out. And it's also part of what your dad's receiving. Like, she's so choked up. She loves me that much. She can't find her words, So anyway, it was just so touching.
Thank you. I mean, I think it's really interesting because we've played colleges and universities with the film a few times, and we're about to play University of Rochester, actually, I should say, and the medical school there at University of Rochester is having a big panel. That's on November 6th, if anybody's watching and wants to go. Just played USC, and when we played Oberlin College, where my son and Gigi both go to school. Gigi was so nervous and horrified that Last Flight Home was playing at her college, and it was like there were like these screens all over the school that were saying Last Flight Home on Friday. It was playing Parents Weekend, and we were there. My brother and I were there because our kids go to school there, and we did a Q&A. 100 families came, and Gigi ended up showing up with a bunch of her friends who were like bawling, crying afterwards, because kids, like, they're losing their grandparents and they don't know how to handle it, and it's so meaningful to them, and everyone can relate. And it really deepened her friendships and relationships, and I think it just proves that everyone who's watching it attaches to somebody in the film. Some people are like Morgan, and some people are like me, and some people are like Gigi, and some people feel like they're like my sister, and they're in this kind of position of like, am I his spiritual, am I his daughter? Am I his rabbi? Am I, or their mom, and they can't face it, and they're losing their husband, so it's kind of like, it really is interesting, the power of film.
Do you mind touching base real quick on what happened with the stroke? I mean, that just baffled me. He went for a massage, and 40 years of paralyzation was the result.
His neck was manipulated. You know how a chiropractor can like crack your neck?
Yeah.
Don't ever have that done, because it's happened. My neurologist told me that she's had 4 different people in there, like in their mid-20s, athletes that have had their neck cracked and had a stroke. So it's just something that can happen. He was in perfect health, 53 years old, ran 6 miles a day. No
Devastating.
cholesterol. It released some cartilage, I guess, or some plaque that that all of us have that in our arteries, and it just kind of blocked the artery for enough time to stop the blood from going to his brain. And then he was going to recover, but a doctor that some of his fancy friends sent over from another hospital took him off the steroid that he was on, because it hadn't been fully tested yet. Came in and took him off the steroid, and he almost died 4 days later. His brain swelled, and that's what actually caused the damage. And so I've been working on a screenplay for 10 years with him called Last Flight Home. I was on the plane ride here working on last night, and have been working on, now that we took that journey as a family, and it impacted us so much, and it's such an important part of the story. It's now the frame of the scripted film, but the scripted film is really the 70s and 80s, the stroke, the airline, the impact on the family of all of it. So you'll get to see that story, God willing.
Great. Yeah. I've been wanting to
be willing.
Yeah. What a fascinating life your father lived.
Oh, amazing.
It's such an important story to tell, because, we all feel somewhat like we take a lot for granted of our health and our abilities, and just to have all that swept out from under him in an instant, it turned all of our lives completely upside down. And as you can see, like 40 years, he sat there sidelined. And I swear to God, every person that is helped by Last Flight Home, it just removes and relieves a little bit of the shame I must have absorbed as a child, and the pressure that I had to sort of fix something that I couldn't fix,
And was there any
10-year-old,
So sorry. Was there any follow-up with the person responsible for this?
Yeah, the same question.
Yeah, so that's in the scripted film too, but I'll tell you. So his name was Saul Rosencrantz, and he was Dad's regular go-to guy, and he did that manipulation of his neck quite regularly. And my mother, 2 days before, was watching this talk show called Our Magazine that used to exist back then, and they had doctors on 2 days before. She was putting her makeup on as like the TV was playing, and they had doctors on warning about when your neck is cracked, like that this could happen and that it could result in a stroke. They had just found that out and gone public with that.
Wow.
And she just thought, well, Saul knows what he's doing, and didn't tell Dad. But it was obviously like the universe warning, right? And if I was mom's such a strange and amazing human, but if I was mom, I would be like so just kicking my, you know what I mean? I don't know what I would be. I'd just be carrying that. But she didn't. She hasn't. She kind of let it go that she didn't tell him. But anyway, so Saul came to the hospital some days after the stroke. And in the movie that I've written, this is a true story. My mom comes into the room and sees him massaging my father's arm, the paralyzed arm, his left arm and leg. And he says, I didn't touch your neck that day, Eli. And they both know that that's completely not true. And in fact, the doctor had just looked at the x-ray and seen the blood clot like right there and said, that ties the Masurin right there, like pointed at it. And they were just
Wow.
stunned with silence. And then a family friend, like one of their good friends, was like, "You need to sue him. Like, you need to stop him from ever doing this again." And he said, "I'm not a litigious person, and we have enough money." I mean, at that point, he did. The airline hadn't gone bankrupt. He hadn't gotten pushed out of it. He hadn't gone bankrupt, but he just wasn't that kind of person.
Yeah, I understand that.
You know him from the movie, and
Yeah. I understand that stance too. I've been in a position like that with my own medical situation in the last year, and I didn't have it in me to tackle it.
Yeah,
it'll work itself out in the wash,
Exactly.
But I do agree that we hope it doesn't happen to other people. I mean,
well, I think it's an important takeaway. It's just many from Last Flight Home, but from the documentary, but also for the scripted film, it'll be way more present. It's way more there. Yeah.
It is not what I expected.
Right.
Including the doctor that took him off the medication. In fact, when you're watching the doc, you see the pages on the bed. Yeah. Those are the pages of the script that I'm reading, Dad. And I just remember being grateful that I was filming that. I didn't have a crew or anything. I just had like 4 cameras set up.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to have like a crew and my dad's, in this private. And
you wanted minimal. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why I had so many cameras set up. So that if one died, every other one was going. And the main one was actually in this house that they live in was my house that I gave them, that I raised my son until he was 8. So in my child's bedroom, I had the main camera that had the lavalier mics in it. So as Dad was approaching the end, I found my brother behind the camera. I found my mom behind the camera, because you could watch whoever was sitting by the bed and they didn't really see you. And so you could put the headphones in and you could hear what they were saying. So my son, I found him crying, watching his grandparents in their last visit together.
Oh, that's so
the
deep.
documentary process became extremely important to the family.
Sorry for the helicopter.
Anyway, the pages on the bed, when I read Dad that scene, he said, I had changed his name slightly. And he said, his name was Peretz Scheinberg. And I said, okay, but I'm calling it Peretz Schachter because your doctor was Dr. Steinberg, and I don't want people to be confused between Scheinberg and Steinberg. And he said, his name was Peretz Steinberg, and you have to put it in because he killed me.
Wow.
Oh,
Jesus.
wow. That's something right there.
He's the one that my dad. Yeah. Wow. The guy who took him off the steroid came in like some big boss visiting doctor and kind of scolded Dr. Steinberg for putting him on this Decadron, a steroid that they use now that was totally effective in keeping the swelling down. Because, as we all know now, inflammation is the cause of most every problem. Mm-hmm. So that was what happened. And it swelled and it almost went to his brainstem and would have killed him. But my mother, 4 days later, felt like she was on a death watch because Dad went from telling jokes and being totally there and moving his left arm and leg to totally out.
Wow.
And she stopped Dr. Steinberg coming out of the elevator and she said, Doctor,
what's happening?
I feel like my husband's dying. And he said, well, who's the doctor here? And she said, you are. He said, well, then I want him back on Decadron immediately, and put him back on, and he survived. So
I have chicken skin head to toe. That's crazy.
Wow.
But luckily, and I really hope he's watching, at least these 40 years that he was sidelined and you all didn't know him and he didn't get to make the impact that he made so much on so many families with Air Florida and the airline industry, at least through the movie, he's touching so many lives. And I just hope he knows that.
He's here right now.
Oh, he's got to be here right now.
I feel him.
Yeah.
He's here.
He's
shining through you right now.
Well, that was a point I was going to make earlier. Yeah. The things I said about you and how you're able to. Can you? What you say it again? What?
I said I'm his agent. I'm his agent.
Yeah. The things that we were talking about earlier about how you're able to make others feel comfortable and approach really big conversations and moments and bring people together and all these things. That ability you have, I believe that's your dad's ability, right? Like you are so your father's daughter in that way, because you could see the things he did, the airlines, the things he was able to accomplish and do.
Yeah.
You move mountains to tell stories, and he moved mountains to connect people and make people feel heard, and that's all your dad, and that's so obvious.
He's with you 100%. There's no denying it.
No denying it. Yeah.
Well,
I feel honored to know him now.
Yeah, me too.
It end on one story. I could tell you a story that actually like has me believe that and will give comfort to people who have had loss in their lives. I think because, my dad was atheist and also just didn't, as you saw in the flashback, I included back to October of the year before, where he tells my sister that he thinks there's nothing after you die, to where he then was starting to see his family and felt like he was so sure he was going to watch over us. My mom was like, Ondi, have you seen him? David, have you seen him? Like, after he died, she was missing him so much. She just couldn't wrap her head around losing her partner of 54 years. Like she was in denial in those last weeks. And really, there was nothing that could possibly bring it home to her until he was gone, and now she still like is so ready to cry every second you ever talk about him. And even every day almost she cries about missing him. But one day she was in the kitchen and she fell. She was taking coffee grinds to the trash and they actually fell in her ear and she like was on the floor, and she was supposed to actually come visit my house, which is about like 10 minutes up the road. And she snaked her way on the floor to the couch and pulled herself up onto the floor. And she called me and she said, Ondi, I'm okay. I fell. I'm not going to make it over. And I said, okay, well, Jenny, my assistant editor, she's actually coming over because my office was behind the house. And so, which is one way I was able to make the documentary without there being a documentary, because all the stuff could just disappear back there. All the cards could just go back there.
Tricks.
So, so I said, well, Jenny will bring you food over, no problem. So mom was sort of listening for Jenny's voice, and she heard this low voice of this man bellow out shortly thereafter, Lisa, and it was Cooper, Dad's nurse from Last Flight Home.
Oh.
And he hadn't been there in a year and a half. It was a year and a half after Dad died. And there he was standing at the door with like pastries in his hand. And he said, are you okay? And she said, well, I just fell, but why? And he said, I was driving home from the bakery and Eli's voice came into my head and said, go to Lisa. And then he said, I took a turn towards my house and then it came again. And then I took a third turn towards my house and it said, go to Lisa.
Oh, I'm dying. This
third
is
time. He said, so I just had to turn around and come back. And what's so incredible about that too, like to me, that's the most irrefutable evidence I've ever heard of something like this. But the other crazy thing is that not included in the documentary, but completely captured in the 500 hours of footage, Dad begged me, he said, you're the fire. You are the power. You can make this happen. I need you to keep Cooper on to take care of Mom after I'm gone. And I said, I kind of knew that like, Mom doesn't want a caregiver around all the time. You know what I mean? And like, that's going to be Mom's choice. Of course, we'll help her with whatever she needs. And I said, well, Dad will do whatever Mom needs. He said, no, seriously, promise me. Cooper's so great. Please promise me you'll keep Cooper. And so I know Cooper would be the person that he would go to. Right.
Right.
Isn't that amazing?
That's so sweet.
That says so much about Cooper. Do you know what I mean?
Cooper would listen.
Your family draws in all, the alignments that you have of all this goodness and this greatness and the openness and the things that we all gain from your stories. I mean, I'm so honored that we've had this time with you today. I really am. Yeah. What a blessing. You're our first episode of The Art of Human Maintenance. And we are so honored to be aligned with you right now in this moment. Thank you very, very much.
I had to take a screenshot of you because I think it's so lovely. And I'm so honored.
totally crying right now.
I'm very honored to be your first guest, and I think you're making something really special and important, and I'll support it however I can. And thanks so much for taking the time with me.
Thank you. So sweet. And I'm only here because of Tana and her ability to connect people. So I feel so honored. And I have 2,000 other questions about your ability with filmmaking. That's another day, but I'm just like so inspired by you. It's awesome.
Oh, thanks, Ben. Thanks,
thank
Tana.
you. Thank you for being here.
And Ondi, the highest vibrations for your premiere. Like, I hope it far exceeds all your dreams. I know it will. It's just such a deep, lovely, wonderful project, as all of your films are. So
we're in a really dark time at this point, which is why your podcast is so important. And I will promote this, and you can check out like sort of what's happening with the films. And Last Flight Home is Last Flight Home, or LFH Film. You can just search Last Flight Home, and All God's Children will be All God's Film, I think.
Okay.
So yeah, tune in. And
Awesome.
and we'll talk to you guys really soon. Thanks so much for having me on.
Thank you, Ondi.
Thank you, Ondi.
Have a great night. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. You too.
Bye, honey.
Bye.